Human behavior often operates on predictable psychological patterns, and one of the most compelling of these is the way people respond to attention, scarcity, and social cues. A curious phenomenon observed in interpersonal relationships, especially romantic or emotionally charged ones, is that the less attention someone receives from a person they're interested in, the more their interest tends to grow. This idea, which may sound counterintuitive at first, is actually rooted in well-established psychological principles, particularly those related to human attention, emotional triggers, and the concept of scarcity. At the heart of this behavior lies the principle of scarcity, a foundational idea in behavioral psychology and economics. When something appears to be limited or withheld, people often assign it more value. If someone consistently receives attention, they may begin to take it for granted. On the other hand, when attention is suddenly withdrawn or becomes less available, the person on the receiving end may experience an increase in desire and curiosity. This does not necessarily mean that ignoring someone will always make them obsessed, but it suggests that unpredictable patterns of availability can trigger increased psychological investment. This behavior can also be tied to attachment theory, which explores how individuals form emotional bonds and how their early experiences shape these bonds in adulthood. People with certain attachment styles, such as anxious attachment, may respond to withdrawal or indifference with increased pursuit. They may perceive the lack of attention as a challenge or as a need to prove their worth, which can lead to heightened emotional interest in the person who is ignoring them. Another concept at play is reverse psychology, a tactic where suggesting the opposite of what one wants can lead to the desired result. In social and romantic settings, showing disinterest or emotional detachment can sometimes stimulate a person's desire to win back attention or gain validation. The key psychological trigger here is the idea that people often want what they cannot have. If someone senses that another individual is emotionally unavailable, their brain may interpret that unavailability as evidence of high value or uniqueness, thereby fueling further interest. It's important to also consider the role of uncertainty. Studies in behavioral psychology suggest that people are often more drawn to unpredictable outcomes than predictable ones. If someone's attention or emotions are inconsistent, sometimes present and sometimes absent, it creates a mental loop of anticipation and reward, much like the mechanics of a slot machine. This pattern of intermittent reinforcement is one of the most powerful psychological motivators, often leading individuals to keep pursuing the source of attention even when it's sparse or inconsistent. However, while these patterns are common, they should not be interpreted as advice to manipulate others. Education about human psychology is not meant to justify games or emotional manipulation. Rather, it helps us become aware of the subconscious forces that drive human behavior so that we can approach relationships with greater understanding and integrity. It is critical to emphasize that respect, honesty, and mutual communication form the foundation of healthy human interaction. When a person appears to ignore someone, their behavior may be interpreted in multiple ways depending on context. Sometimes it may be perceived as confidence or emotional independence, which can be attractive. Other times, it may be read as disinterest or rejection. What is most significant is that the person doing the ignoring is acting authentically, not pretending to be indifferent to gain attention, but genuinely focused on their own life, goals, and well-being. That authenticity is what others may find compelling, not the act of ignoring itself. This brings us to the idea of self, worth, and internal validation. When someone radiates confidence and self-sufficiency, they often attract others naturally. Their value is not derived from external validation, but from their own sense of identity and purpose. This is often mistaken as playing hard to get, when in reality, it's simply a reflection of someone who respects their own time, energy, and emotional space. Others may find this energy captivating, leading them to pay more attention or even become obsessed with understanding the person better. It's also worth mentioning the psychological mirror effect. Sometimes, when one person pulls away, the other unconsciously mirrors that shift with greater emotional effort to restore balance. This is an example of homeostasis in relationships, where one partner's behavior influences the emotional positioning of the other. In simpler terms, one person's emotional withdrawal may compel the other to advance, which gives rise to the feeling that the more he ignores you, the more obsessed he becomes. Educationally speaking, understanding these dynamics can help young people and adults alike navigate relationships more mindfully. Instead of interpreting someone's disinterest as rejection or responding with desperation, we can view it through the lens of psychological behavior. When we know how people tend to respond to attention, we can make better decisions, not to control others, but to manage our own emotions more wisely. Ultimately, education about attention dynamics teaches us not to chase those who ignore us, but to recognize our own value. It teaches us to focus on self-growth and to avoid misinterpreting another's behavior as a measure of our worth. By understanding the psychology behind attention and interest, we can form healthier, more balanced relationships that are not rooted in insecurity or manipulation, but grounded in mutual respect and authenticity. Kindness is often misunderstood in modern society. In many circles, especially competitive or emotionally charged environments, being kind can be falsely interpreted as a sign of weakness, submission, or emotional fragility. However, when examined from an educational and psychological perspective, kindness is not only a strength, it is a powerful personal asset that reflects emotional intelligence, self-control, and character development. To be kind, especially in situations where it is difficult to do so, requires internal discipline and self-awareness. Kindness is not just about smiling or saying polite words. It is the deliberate choice to act with compassion, empathy, and understanding, even when one is under stress, being provoked, or dealing with negativity from others. This level of emotional regulation is far more challenging than reacting impulsively with anger or sarcasm. Therefore, rather than being a passive or weak behavior, kindness actually requires inner strength and conscious effort. One reason kindness is often seen as weakness is because society frequently celebrates dominance, aggression, or control, particularly in media portrayals of leadership or success. Assertiveness is confused with hostility, and quiet strength is overshadowed by louder, more aggressive personalities. But true strength lies in the ability to maintain one's values, dignity, and composure, especially in the face of adversity. A kind person is not someone who lets others walk over them, but someone who chooses peace over conflict, respect over retaliation, and understanding over judgment. Kindness also demonstrates a high level of emotional intelligence, which is the ability to recognize and manage one's own emotions, while also recognizing and influencing the emotions of others. Emotionally intelligent individuals are often kind because they understand the power of empathy, of putting themselves in someone else's position. They know that everyone is facing their own challenges, struggles, or emotional burdens, and therefore choose to offer kindness rather than criticism. In educational settings, this quality fosters a more collaborative and inclusive learning environment. In professional or social contexts, it leads to better teamwork, communication, and trust. Moreover, acts of kindness have been proven through psychological research to have a positive feedback effect. When a person performs an act of kindness, even something small like offering a compliment or listening attentively, it not only benefits the receiver, but also enhances the emotional well-being of the giver. Kindness increases levels of serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin in the body's field, good chemicals, creating a positive loop that reinforces further prosocial behavior. This is known as the helper's high. And it underscores the idea that kindness has tangible, psychological benefits for the person who practices it. Educationally, teaching kindness as a strength means encouraging people to adopt it not just as a reactive behavior, but as a lifestyle or mindset. A kind person does not pick and choose when to be respectful based on convenience or status. Instead, they treat everyone with equal dignity, whether it is a friend, a stranger, a subordinate, or a person who may not treat them well in return. This form of kindness is not naive, it is strategic and wise. It helps build a reputation of reliability and fairness, qualities that are essential for long-term personal and professional success. Another important educational point is that kindness does not mean avoiding confrontation or failing to stand up for oneself. On the contrary, some of the kindest individuals are also the most assertive when necessary. The difference lies in the delivery. Assertiveness paired with kindness allows one to express needs, set boundaries, and speak the truth without resorting to cruelty or disrespect. For example, saying, "I understand how you feel, but I have to disagree," is both kind and firm. This balanced communication style often results in more effective conflict resolution and less emotional damage on both sides. Furthermore, in a world where people are often judged quickly based on appearances, opinions, or social media profiles, being kind is an act of courage. It takes courage to assume the best in others, to offer grace instead of judgment, and to continue believing in human goodness even when faced with cynicism or betrayal. Educating people, especially youth, about the strength behind kindness prepares them to be thoughtful leaders, respectful peers, and compassionate citizens. Kindness also serves as a quiet but influential force of social change. When practiced consistently, it can challenge toxic norms and hostile environments. In schools, workplaces, or even online platforms, small acts of kindness can ripple outward, influencing group dynamics, improving morale, and reducing conflict. It creates a culture where people feel seen, valued, and supported, not out of obligation, but because kindness becomes part of the shared values of that environment. In closing, understanding kindness as a strength rather than a weakness is a powerful shift in perspective. It means recognizing that compassion requires courage, empathy demands discipline, and being consistently respectful, especially toward those who may not deserve. It reflects a deep sense of integrity. In an educational context, kindness is a skill to be developed, a trait to be admired, and a tool to be used for building better relationships and better communities. Rather than trying to appear strong by acting cold, indifferent, or distant, we can redefine strength as the ability to be kind in every circumstance, because that, ultimately, is what makes the greatest difference in the world. Maintaining a healthy balance between self-respect and compassion is one of the most critical social and emotional skills a person can develop. While these two values are often seen as opposite, self-respect focusing inward and compassion reaching outward, they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, true emotional maturity involves understanding how to care for others without abandoning oneself. Educating individuals, especially young adults and students, on this balance empowers them to form healthier relationships, avoid emotional burnout, and lead with both integrity and kindness. Self-respect is the foundation of personal dignity and self-worth. It refers to the internal recognition that one's thoughts, feelings, time, and boundaries are valuable. It manifests in how a person speaks to themselves, how they allow others to treat them, and how they make decisions. On the other hand, compassion is the emotional response to the suffering or needs of others, coupled with a desire to help or alleviate that distress. Compassion is outward, facing, and it motivates empathy, kindness, and supportive behavior. Problems arise when individuals place too much emphasis on one and neglect the other. For instance, someone who prioritizes compassion but lacks self-respect may find themselves constantly sacrificing their own well-being to accommodate others. They may struggle to say no, allow themselves to be treated poorly, or seek validation by pleasing everyone. Over time, this leads to resentment, emotional exhaustion, and a loss of identity. On the other hand, someone who clings too tightly to self-respect while suppressing compassion might come across as cold, distant, or even arrogant. They might build rigid emotional walls that prevent meaningful connection or understanding of others' pain. This is why educational systems, parenting approaches, and leadership training must emphasize the integration of both qualities. It is not enough to teach people to be kind without also teaching them to set healthy boundaries. Likewise, it is unwise to only promote stand your ground and mentalities without cultivating emotional awareness and empathy. Understanding this balance begins with clarity around personal boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep others out. They are guidelines that protect one's emotional, physical, and mental space. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect, and doing so with kindness is an act of compassion. For example, a person may say, "I care about you, but I need some time to myself right now." This communicates both empathy and self-awareness. It allows the individual to take care of their needs without dismissing or hurting the other person. Education around this topic also involves recognizing that compassion does not require self-sacrifice. It is possible to be deeply understanding of others while still choosing what is best for oneself. A student, for instance, may be asked to take on extra responsibilities for a classmate or teacher. While helping can be generous, if it starts to interfere with the student's own well-being, academic performance, or mental health, saying no is not selfish, it is necessary. This is where self-respect functions as a protective boundary that keeps compassion sustainable over time. In relationships, whether friendships, romantic partnerships, or family dynamics, the need for balance becomes even more critical. Often, people stay in unhealthy relationships out of compassion. They want to fix the other person, offer endless chances, or avoid making the other person feel abandoned. While this motivation may stem from a good heart, it can lead to serious emotional harm if it is not balanced with self-respect. A healthy relationship is not one where one person constantly sacrifices their peace for another's comfort, but one where mutual respect, emotional accountability, and kindness coexist. It is also essential to understand that asserting oneself does not mean being harsh. Many people fear that standing up for themselves will come off as rude, selfish, or unkind, but tone and intention matter greatly. Saying, "I can't help with this right now because I'm overwhelmed, but I hope things work out for you," is both firm and caring. Through practice, individuals can learn how to express their needs clearly while still showing respect and warmth to others. Developing this balance also protects against manipulation and emotional abuse. Some people may take advantage of others' kindness, guilt, tripping, or emotionally blackmailing them into compliance. When a person has strong self-respect, they are better equipped to recognize such behaviors and respond with confidence. At the same time, compassion helps ensure that their response is thoughtful, not reactive. It allows them to walk away from toxic situations without bitterness and to choose peace over vengeance. Educational settings can reinforce this message by modeling respectful communication, teaching emotional regulation, and providing students with conflict resolution tools. When students are taught how to validate their own emotions while also recognizing those of others, they become more resilient, socially responsible, and emotionally aware. This is just as vital as academic achievement because it equips them for the challenges of real-world relationships and leadership. In the end, self-respect and compassion are not two sides of a coin, but two essential strands of the same thread. They shape how we relate to ourselves and others, and when nurtured together, they help us build lives of both strength and service. Teaching individuals to value their inner voice while remaining open to the feelings of others is one of the most important lessons for personal development. It allows kindness to remain empowered, not exploited. It enables strength to be soft, not hardened. And ultimately, it lays the foundation for healthier individuals and more compassionate communities. Emotional intelligence, often referred to as EQ, plays a profound role in shaping the quality of our relationships, communication, and overall social functioning. While traditional education often emphasizes intellectual intelligence or IQs, skills like logic, reasoning, and academic performance, emotional intelligence is just as essential, particularly when it comes to navigating human relationships. Understanding and applying emotional intelligence can transform the way people interact with one another, resolve conflicts, and build meaningful connections based on empathy and mutual respect. At its core, emotional intelligence involves the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and influence both one's own emotions and the emotions of others. It comprises several key components: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skills, and motivation. Each of these components contributes to stronger interpersonal interactions and healthier emotional environments, whether in schools, workplaces, or personal relationships. Self-awareness is the foundational step in emotional intelligence. It means being in tune with one's own feelings, knowing why certain emotions arise, and understanding how these feelings affect thoughts and behaviors. When individuals are self-aware, they are less likely to project their insecurities or frustrations onto others. For example, someone who realizes they are feeling anxious before a conversation will be more mindful about how they communicate, avoiding misdirected anger or defensiveness. This self-awareness promotes clarity and emotional honesty in social interactions. Self-regulation, the second major component, refers to the ability to manage emotions constructively. It's not about suppressing feelings, but rather about choosing appropriate responses. Emotionally intelligent people can pause, reflect, and respond rather than react impulsively. In difficult social situations, such as being ignored or disrespected, self-regulation allows individuals to remain composed and assertive without being confrontational. Instead of responding with hostility, they can set boundaries calmly or walk away with dignity. This shows maturity and earns respect. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, is perhaps the most recognizable aspect of emotional intelligence in social life. Empathy allows individuals to see things from another person's perspective, to validate their emotions, and to respond with compassion. In a group setting, empathy helps create a sense of safety and inclusivity. When a person feels heard and understood, they are more likely to engage positively and trust the people around them. Empathy also serves as a bridge in conflict resolution. It opens the door to compromise and connection rather than separation and blame. In romantic or emotionally sensitive relationships, emotional intelligence plays a particularly vital role. When someone ignores or distances themselves, it can trigger feelings of insecurity or frustration in the other person. However, instead of responding with neediness or anger, a person with emotional intelligence understands that the other's behavior may stem from their own internal struggles or boundaries. Rather than taking things personally, emotionally intelligent individuals observe, reflect, and approach the situation with both curiosity and restraint. This not only protects their emotional well-being, but also reduces unnecessary drama or emotional dependence. Social skills, the fourth key element of emotional intelligence, allow individuals to communicate effectively, collaborate with others, and build lasting relationships. These skills involve active listening, respectful dialogue, and an ability to adapt to different social cues. Someone with strong social skills can read the emotional atmosphere of a group, sense when tension is rising, and intervene constructively. For example, they might mediate a disagreement between peers or offer support to someone who feels left out. These seemingly small actions contribute significantly to the harmony and cohesion of any social environment. Another important aspect of emotional intelligence is intrinsic motivation, the inner drive to grow, learn, and do the right thing, regardless of external rewards or recognition. Emotionally intelligent people are often motivated by a desire to improve themselves and their relationships. They are not dependent on constant attention, praise, or approval. This is particularly important when navigating situations where someone else may ignore or undervalue them. Instead of chasing validation or becoming emotionally reactive, they maintain their sense of self, worth, and continue acting with kindness and integrity. In educational contexts, teaching emotional intelligence helps students develop a stronger sense of self and better relationships with peers and teachers. When students learn to name their emotions, express themselves respectfully, and consider the feelings of others, classrooms become more cooperative and supportive. Conflict and bullying decrease, and emotional resilience increases. Likewise, in professional environments, employees with higher emotional intelligence are often better leaders, collaborators, and problem solvers. The impact of emotional intelligence extends beyond individual relationships. It influences the tone and culture of entire communities. Leaders with emotional intelligence are more effective because they inspire trust, communicate clearly, and manage challenges with empathy and calm. Parents, educators, and mentors who model emotional intelligence pass these vital skills to the next generation, creating a ripple effect of emotional maturity and compassion. In conclusion, emotional intelligence is not a luxury, it is a necessity for thriving in social interactions. It allows individuals to connect authentically with others while maintaining their own inner stability. It empowers people to respond to challenges, such as being ignored or misunderstood, with confidence and grace. Emotional intelligence promotes a society where people listen more, judge less, and support each other through both successes and struggles. By teaching and practicing emotional intelligence, we create stronger individuals and more compassionate communities. This is the kind of intelligence the world needs most, not just in minds, but in hearts.